I was drafted when I turned 18, finished the Air Force training course as a navigator, and joined the Air Force Squadron 69, located in Emek, Israel in the north. I flew the F-4, a fighter jet also known as Phantom. The very same airplane fought in Vietnam and was later given to Israel by the United States. The Lebanon War started the following year. I served in the squadron first in full capacity and later in the reserve forces until the year 2000. Serving in the squadron was without second thoughts. We trusted not only our fellow fighter pilots we knew personally, but also the command that sent us to missions. We trusted the system to care for our families if anything went wrong. In the late 1990s, when I was in the reserve forces, a helicopter went down and the two pilots were killed. Although these pilots shared the same mission and sat side by side in the same cockpit, they were treated differently. One was in Keva, which means a full-time soldier, and his family was thoroughly cared for. The other was in the reserve forces. His family needed to sort out his life insurance policy and ended up in a very different situation, getting a fraction of what the family of the full-time soldier would receive. When we learned about it, we knew that it was wrong. We raised our concerns to our commanders and later to representatives from the Minister of Defense. But our concerns fell on deaf ears. We were approached with arrogance, but we didn't buy their hollow response about, quote unquote, giving to the country. This is the maximum the country can do, and we all love Israel. With a heavy heart, we had tough internal debates, and not everybody was on the same page. But we felt that morality was on our side. We asked that any soldier's family, regardless of their status in the army, will receive equal care if their loved one is hurt. In simple words, we said that our lives meant something and declared a strike. We stopped signing up for our weekly training. The strike didn't last long. In a few weeks, the government and the Minister of Defense found the budget and the regulations were rewritten. I guess you have already figured out the point of this story. Anybody didn't? Yes, as reserve forces flying deadly fighter jets that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, we have a lot of responsibility. But with it also comes a lot of accountability. As volunteers to the reserve forces, we are not reporting to the Prime Minister or to the Minister of Defense. We are reporting first of all to ourselves, to our families, and to who we are. Yes, a decision to strike is the last resort and should not be taken lightly. We never took it lightly, but sometimes this is what you need to do. Yes, each one of us, no matter who we are, has the privilege and the duty to do everything in our power within the law to keep our home a democracy. Yes, these are critical times. Too few checks and balances could have been removed and Israel could wake up to a true nightmare. Yes, the judicial system needs an overhaul, but opposite of what the current government wants. It must be strengthened with equal rights and duties for all. To ultra-Orthodox and Arabs alike. And in addition, we need an education system that supports schools that teach the value of equality, freedom, and democracy.
Yes!
Yes, there cannot be a true democracy and kibush, occupation. It's a big shame and a dark cloud hanging over Israel for over 50 years. Not only about human rights violations, but now, as we all realize, it's hanging over Israel democracy. This cloud is getting thicker and darker with no end in sight. And in addition, we need an education system that supports schools that teach the value of equality, freedom, and democracy. Yes, there cannot be a true democracy and kibush, occupation. It's a big shame and a dark cloud hanging over Israel for over 50 years. Not only about human rights violations, but now, as we all realize, it's hanging over Israel democracy. This cloud is getting thicker and darker with no end in sight. Yes, and this is the last one. The path forward is very messy. All who believe in democracy in Israel society will need to take a deep breath and believe that change is possible in a non-violent way. We can't afford to lose this war on Israel democracy. My family and I lived in in Seattle for 18 years. Before that, we lived in Israel, where our 3 children were born. We, as well as the rest of our family in Israel, are terrified. Is this really happening? My nephew returned all wet after being water cannoned in Ayalon. He is 13 years old. My daughter, who studies medicine in Israel, was pepper sprayed at a demonstration in Tel Aviv by an ultra-nationalist extremist with their face covered. My mother told me yesterday that she is frustrated since she cannot participate in the demonstration. She is 94 years old. She lives in Haifa. She remembered demonstrating against the white book, a Sefer Alavan, 1939. This week, we will all celebrate Pesach, Chag HaCherut, the holiday of freedom. Gets a very new meaning this year. Chag Sameach to you all.